Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, when we watch movies today, it feels like almost anything goes right. But how did we get here?
It's a really interesting path, actually. The idea of controlling what shows up on screen, well, it has a long and pretty tangled history in the US.
That's exactly what we're digging into today. The history of film censorship, based on some fascinating materials we've gathered.
Mm-hmm. We'll look at everything from the very first attempts at rules right up to the rating system we all know now.
Yeah, and there are some surprising twists along the way. Our goal here is really to understand the forces that shaped, what we could and couldn't see.
And it started early. Even in the silent film era, people were already thinking about regulating content.
Right, but then sound came along, and that really changed the game, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Sound brought in bigger audiences, families, kids. But it also allowed for, well, more intense stuff like more grim, violent realism, as some put it.
And that realism sparked a bit of an outcry.
Definitely. People started demanding more control. And it wasn't just talk. The very first actual censorship law related to film was passed in Maine way back in 1897.
1897, wow. That's practically the dawn of cinema. What were they even watching then?
Well, one example from that year was a film of the fight of the century, a boxing match between James Corbett and Bob Fitzsimmons. So, somewhat visceral content even then.
Okay. And Maine wasn't alone for long?
No, other places jumped in. Chicago, for instance, in 1907, gave police the power to deny movie permits based on moral grounds.
Moral grounds, that sounds pretty vague.
Very. And then things got really dramatic in New York City. December 1908, they shut down all 550 movie theaters by revoking their licenses. Just like that.
Whoa, a complete shutdown. That must have sent a message.
It certainly did, and it probably pushed things towards a more organized system. Which leads us to 1909 and the creation of the New York Board of Motion Picture Censorship.
Okay, a dedicated board. Who's on it?
It was a mix, 14 people, social workers, educators, clergymen, quite the panel.
So what was their job exactly? Just deciding thumbs up or thumbs down?
Pretty much. They reviewed films and, crucially, they could recommend cuts. They even published reviews, sort of guides for parents about what was suitable for kids.
That's actually quite interesting, publishing reviews for parents back then. Did this board have much influence?
Almost immediately. Its impact spread so quickly that it soon changed its name to the National Review Board of Motion Picture Censorship.
Okay, so they were aiming for nationwide standards. Can you give us a sense of what they approved or disapproved of, like specific examples?
Sure. Looking at their reviews gives a real flavor. Daydreams about a child's fantasy involving the sea that was fine for families, kids included. Simple enough.
It sounds harmless.
What else? Forget Me Not, described as a Christmas toy love story, also recommended for families with children.
Okay, still pretty tame. Anything a bit more exciting?
Well, there was Killing the Killer. This one featured a fight between a cobra and a mongoose.
Oh, how'd that end?
The review notes it was disastrous for the cobra. This one was recommended for families, including young people, so maybe slightly older kids.
Right. A bit of nature, red in tooth and claw.
Exactly. And then you had films like The Barker, a circus story. The review mentions it had talking sequences, still a novelty, and summarized the plot involving, a father, his son, an old flame seeking revenge, a circus girl named Lou.
That sounds like a proper drama. And the verdict.
Also recommended for families, including young people. They noted the dialogue was unusually good, so it wasn't just about avoiding bad stuff, but also highlighting quality, I suppose.
Interesting. But you can imagine the studios weren't exactly thrilled about outside groups telling them what to cut, right?
Not at all. So the big studios banded together and formed the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, the MPPDA, and they hired Will Hayes.
Ah, the Will Hayes. He was a big deal, wasn't he? Paid a fortune.
A very hefty sum, yes. $150,000 back then. His job was basically to represent the studio's interests, smooth things over, and maybe head off stricter government censorship by promoting self-regulation.
Self-regulation, so the industry policing itself.
That was the idea. Hayes got studio heads together, and in 1927 they came up with a list, kind of a precursor to the main code. It had 11 don'ts things to avoid completely and 25 be carefuls.
Okay, laying down some ground rules internally.
Exactly. And that led directly to the more formal motion picture production code in 1930. We usually just call it the Hayes Code.
The Hayes Code.
Right.
Was it effective right away?
Not really, no. Initially, it didn't have much teeth, and a lot of filmmakers kind of mocked it or found ways around it.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics. What was on that don't list? The absolute no-nos.
It's quite revealing. Pointed profanity was out. They even listed words, God, Lord, Jesus, hell, damn, unless, used reverently.
Yeah. Even hell and damn.
Yeah.
What else?
Licentious nudity, so suggestive nudity. Any depiction of illegal drug traffic. White slavery. Miscegenation, meaning interracial relationships.
Wow. That really reflects the social anxieties and prejudices of the time. Anything else banned outright?
Yep. Scenes of actual childbirth, any ridicule of the clergy,
Right.
and anything considered a willful offense to any nation, race, or creed.
A pretty comprehensive list of things you just couldn't show. So what about the be careful list? What needed delicate handling?
That list was longer and maybe a bit more subjective. Part 1 included things like disrespectful use of the flag, anything damaging to international relations.
So like, don't make other countries look bad.
Pretty much. Also, be careful with depicting arson, firearms, theft, robbery, safecracking, dynamiting, basically how crimes are committed.
They didn't want to give people ideas.
Seems like it. Also on the list, brutality, gruesomeness, the technique of committing murder, methods of smuggling, torture to get confessions, even showing actual hangings or electrocutions.
There's some stuff.
And generating sympathy for criminals was a no-no, plus negative portrayals of public figures or institutions and sedition.
Okay, that covers crime and politics. What else was on the be careful radar?
Part 2 got into more social and personal areas, apparent cruelty to kids or animals, branding people or animals.
Branding, ouch.
Yeah. Also, the sale of women, rape or attempted rape, first night scenes.
Implying, like, the wedding night.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even just showing a man and woman in bed together was on the be careful list. Deliberate seduction of girls, anything questioning the institution of marriage, surgical operations.
Surgical operations. Why? Too graphic.
Presumably. Also, the use of drugs, even if not illegal trafficking, titles or scenes that seemed critical of law enforcement. And finally, get this, excessive or lustful kissing.
Excessive kissing. They really tried to cover everything, didn't they? How did they actually enforce all this if it was weak at first?
Well, that changed. The Hayes office eventually set up the Production Code Administration, the PCA. This body had real power. They reviewed scripts before filming and looked at the final cut after.
And if they didn't like it?
If a film didn't get the PCA seal of approval, major theaters, the ones controlled by the studios that signed onto the code, wouldn't show it. So it effectively became mandatory for wide release.
Okay, so that's how the Hays Code got its teeth and really dominated Hollywood for decades. But obviously, things changed. We don't have that code anymore.
Right. By the 1960s, society was changing fast. The code felt really restrictive, outdated. The industry, now under the banner of the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, knew something had to give. It was becoming a bit of a free-for-all anyway, with independent and foreign films pushing boundaries.
So they ditched the code.
They did. They decided to move away from prohibition and towards classification, giving information rather than just saying no. So in 1968, they launched the MPAA reading system.
The one we basically still have today, more or less. G, PG, R.
Pretty much. The original system had 4 ratings. G for general audiences. M for mature audiences, suggested for adults, but anyone could go. R for restricted, meaning under 16s needed a parent. And X for adults only, no one under 17.
Remember M. What happened to that?
M caused confusion. People weren't sure what mature meant, so it became GP general audiences, parental guidance suggested, and then pretty quickly just PG.
Okay, that makes sense. G, PG, R, X. But we also PG-13 now. Where did that come from?
Ah, yes. PG-13 was added later, in 1984. There was a bit of controversy around some big popular films rated PG that some parents felt were too intense for younger kids. Think Spielberg, Indiana Jones, and the Temple of Doom, Poltergeist, even Gremlins.
Right, Temple of Doom had the heart-ripping scene. Gremlins got pretty nasty.
Exactly. Lots of gore, scary images, stuff that didn't quite fit R but felt stronger than PG. So PG-13 was created as that middle ground, a stronger caution for parents.
So we've gone from local police deciding on moral grounds and lists of don'ts to this system of letter ratings guiding audience choice. Quite the journey.
It really is. It shows this constant push and pull, doesn't it, between filmmakers wanting freedom, the public having concerns, and the industry trying to manage it all, often just trying to keep the government out.
Absolutely. So maybe the next time you're watching a movie, especially an older one, think about this history.
Yeah.
Consider the unseen forces, the debates, the codes that shaped what ended up on screen. It definitely adds another layer to think about.
It really does. How much are we still influenced by those older ideas of what's acceptable on screen, even within our current rating system? Something to ponder.